Welcome to The Happy Writer, a show about creating and sustaining a long-term author career. My name is Patty Jansen, writer of science fiction and fantasy. I've published independently since 2011. This show covers motivation, diversification, learning new skills, and your place in your career. Come on in and be happy. In episode 55 of The Happy Writer, I'm going to talk about mistakes that beginning writers make. This sounds pretty dramatic, and I guess I had to choose a clickbaity title for the episode. In truth, this is going to be more about where you should focus your efforts and where you can probably spend a little less time. But that is too long to fit in the episode title box. It is also not to say that you can't recover from any of these things if you have been doing them, and to be honest, we are all guilty of some of them at some point. But with that out of the way, let me just talk about a few things that I can see beginning writers doing that I think is harming their efforts. Let me also say that I run a deals newsletter for science fiction and fantasy. It's called the eBookaroo. It's a newsletter that exists to promote author cross-promotions I am in, so I'm not charging the other writers to be featured, which both means that it's not a commercial venture for me, but also that you get all kinds of interesting submissions, and interesting not always in a good way. In short, I get to see a wide range of efforts from people who have just put out their first book. For some reason, one of the auto-submit engines has cottoned on to my site. Well, I know why that is, because I'm mentioned in a few lists for venues where people can advertise their books, including Nicholas Eric's list and the Reedsy promotion newsletter list. To be honest, I think that is a good thing, because if you're running something like this and you're not getting garbage submissions, it means your reach is not big enough. This is why I get to see a lot of efforts from beginning writers. Also, if you're in some of the larger Facebook groups, such as the SPF Community, Robert Ryan's Authors Unleashed, and a few other groups like that, you will see people post their efforts either before they publish or after publishing. They will ask for comments about the blurb or other things, but it is also a very good way of seeing what other people are doing. If you hang out in these groups for long enough, you get a reasonably decent idea for some of the things I'm going to be talking about. I recommend that you become a member of a community like that, by the way. When someone asks for feedback in the group, you get to be in the shoes of the reader, looking at product pages and seeing things that do or don't work that other people are doing. Right, let's start with the common problems. It's probably no secret that the first mistake I think beginning writers are making is that they don't spend enough time working on their storytelling and their writing skills. It's dead easy to publish a book. You can just write something, use software to proofread it, and throw it up on Amazon. It might even sell a few copies. But few people are born storytellers, and if you want to make writing into a career of some description, it is important that you have writing and storytelling skills down pat. Of course, there is no certain level that you need to reach. There is no accreditation or clearly prescribed skill. There are lots of opinions about what is good writing, but since you're going to use the market, you have to play by what the market wants. You have to be able to tell a story that is satisfying to the people who come to look for it. You have to be able to deliver this in a way that people can understand, in a language that is easy to read for the people you want to pick up your book. I will honestly have some episodes about some of the important skills I have taken away from years of being in writing workshop and watching the masters. This is not an episode about writing craft, but I have already said elsewhere that I think storytelling craft is vitally important. Having an error-free manuscript is also important, but that's a much more easily solvable problem that still doesn't negate the need for good storytelling. I will come back on these subjects in later episodes. The second mistake that I see beginning writers make is that they mix their messaging. Publishing houses have marketing departments for this, and before you say, we're still publishing and I haven't gotten to the marketing yet, I will say that the presentation and messaging of the book cover, the blurb and the writing style, and all the things that a reader can see on the product page are absolutely marketing. They are even your most important marketing. They are the type of marketing that you do before you do all the other marketing. They are the type of marketing that, if you don't get it right, you can throw any amount of money at your product, but it's unlikely to sell. People don't give enough credit for how important it is to get the messaging right. So what do I mean by that? Well, it means that if you place a book in a genre, the cover needs to communicate that genre. Not only that, it needs to communicate the specific subgenre, it needs to communicate the type of reader you want to attract, and it needs to be in line with the genre you placed the book in on retailers, with a blurb and with the first few pages that people can read. For example, if you have heard the message that when you write science fiction you should put a spaceship or a planet on the book cover, and you have got a nice cover with a spaceship, but the blurb is mostly about a romance, and in the first chapter that people can see on the retailer site, there is no mention of going to space or no indication that it is set anywhere other than a contemporary Earth setting, you're going to confuse a lot of people. It's a romance? It's perhaps a science fiction romance? The characters are too young for that, really. Is it a superhero book? Then it should probably have a different cover. It is really important that all these things are in alignment before you start throwing a lot of money at a book in terms of advertising. If you mix these messages, especially if it's unclear whether a story is a romance or not, then you're confusing a lot of people. As I have said, this is the most important type of marketing you can do, and as self-published authors, we are allowed as many tries as necessary to get it right. But we do need to get this right, and changing covers can be expensive, so pay attention to this. I guess this might also indicate a secondary problem, that your book doesn't clearly belong to any one genre. Most first-time authors don't have the faintest clue what precise genre their book belongs in. If this is you, investigate, make a decision, and make sure your story is in line with it. You can, of course, write any complicated cross-genre thing if you want. That's the beauty of self-publishing, but this makes the book infinitely harder to sell. You're much better off shaping your ideas into clear genres that fall within established genre parameters. Of course, the content of your book can still be a little bit different, but the messaging needs to be clear and on point. It makes any money you spend on advertising go so much further. Another mistake that a subset of authors make is that they think they can spend their way out of the doldrums. To a certain extent you can, and this also ties back to the previous point. You can if your messaging is on point, if you have done your work on craft. It is highly unlikely that your first book is going to be a runaway success, and if it is, you'll probably find yourself extremely unprepared for it, and may spend the rest of your career scratching your head, wondering what you did, and are unable to repeat it. I've seen that happen more than I'd like to recount. But throwing limitless amount of money at your first book because I'm a business and it's an investment is also not really a wise thing to do. Just because it is your first book, you are highly likely to have gotten some of your messaging wrong. You really don't know what you're doing, and that's okay. You can learn and you can recover. But if, with a few marketing pushes, nothing much happens, just treat advertising as a budgetary item. Put a small amount of money in it every month that you are willing to spend for the sake of learning or audience expansion, and then keep writing. Most of the successful writers are catalogue writers, where we make our income from our entire catalogue across a wide range of formats and retailers. This is another mistake I can see beginning writers make, that they think they must have a bestseller and they obsess about their first book's rankings and the reviews and all that stuff. Really, this doesn't matter half as much as you think it does. Sales and rankings can be recovered. If your book doesn't take off by itself, just keep a level of promotion going and write another book. Most likely, your subsequent books will be much better, much more marketable, and much easier to market as a result. One of the other mistakes I can see people making is that they don't understand the value of cumulative sales. What do I mean by this? Well, as you expand your catalogue, each additional book adds to the appeal. If a reader comes to your page at a retailer and sees you have only one book out, they may not bother, because many people who have only one book out disappear off the face of the planet, and a reader is looking for a kind of relationship with a writer. They have invested time and money in your book, and now they understand that you write what they like, and they don't want to invest any more time into having to find yet another writer to read. Of course, not all readers are like that, but many of them are. So with each book that you put in your catalogue, you will attract more readers. With each book, your capital grows a little bit more. This isn't, for most people at least, a game of trying to get the next bestseller. It's about getting a catalogue that feeds into each other. For me, personally, it is also not about getting high ranking on any particular retailer. I take being wide to the extreme, and I actually prefer to get readers who are happy to pay full price on my own website. I'll take those readers over buyers on any platform. When someone comes to my website and buys every single book that I have, this represents several $100s of sales. Those readers are easier to entice to buy the next book, or just finally convince getting audiobooks because they are more expensive, or they might even want to buy print books to give as Christmas presents to their friends. If they buy direct from you, you keep more of the cover price. It is about very slowly finding those readers who will then read through your entire catalogue and buy everything you've written, and preferably while knowing who these people are. Beginners are too focused on the individual sales and the level of supposed embarrassment if you put up something that doesn't sell. They will ask if a venue is worth it without defining the it. If a venue allows you to put up your stuff for free, it's always worth listing there, even if you sell only 10 copies a year there. Cumulative catalogue sales are about an aggregate of the dribs and drabs from everywhere. Every venue is worth it, unless they charge you money. Then, when at the end of the year, when you're doing your financials, you should add up not just how much a single book made in a year, but add up how much it has made over its lifetime. And you know that a book that did particularly poorly in one year, but has been more successful in the past, can be revived without you doing any extra work. I've seen people do silly things such as unpublish those books because they are somehow embarrassed by the level of sales that no one can see. Why? Unless you feel a book no longer fits your catalogue, or it's non-fiction and too outdated, I would not unpublish any books. They may only make you a very small amount of money each month, but it is money that you don't have to do any additional work for. It is money that is the result of promotions that you did on your most recent release. This is where your backlist is at work, and you can put up your feet and literally do nothing. Don't worry about bestsellers, and don't worry that some books will languish in the telephone rankings. If you still believe in those books, and that they are well represented together with the rest of your catalogue, they will continue to earn money that you don't have to do anything for. Most successful writers have a large backlist, and within that backlist at any point in time, they will have books that sell well and books that don't sell so well. But the power of all those books being on your author page gives the reader trust that you are committed to being an author, and that one of those books might just be something they really enjoy and tell all their friends about. I've had odd sales bumps that sometimes last for months on specific books without having any idea why this happened. So there you go. Don't publish too soon. Work on your craft. Make sure your stuff is branded. Don't worry too much about having a bestseller or spending so much money on your first release. And don't discount the huge power of backlist and cumulative sales. These are the things I would like to tell a beginning writer. In the next episode, I'll talk about using dictation in your writing process. Thank you for listening to the Happy Writer Show. Check out links and information about other episodes on my website at pattyjansen.com, where you can also find out about my books. You can support me by subscribing to the show or on Patreon at patreon.com/pattyjansen.